Now, South Africa is being pitched to investors, trade partners and authorities, which is a stark departure from the post-apartheid dreams we once held. This is according to brand reputation specialist Solly Moeng. And in his latest opinion piece, Moeng says South Africans should put their differences aside to save the country. And he also believes the moonshot pact by opposition parties should just be what the country needs. He joins us on the line all the way from Switzerland in La Grey. I hope I pronounced the town where you are very well. Thank you, Solly, and thank you so much for your time. You're saying that South Africa can do better in terms of reputational management. What do you mean, especially when it comes to us being a preferred investment destination?
Well, hello, Cindy, and to your listeners out there. Thank you. Look, we have made a promise to the world and to ourselves at the dawn of our democracy. We said this, we shunned the country that we used to be. We promised the world the kind of country we were going to be. We were very attractive. We had great leadership that had vision. We almost knew where we were going. And somewhere along the road, something really bad happened, and we haven't recovered. Now, today, South Africa is seen to be pulling in two different directions, or in many different directions, rather. We are not able to offer the world a clear policy on economics and politics. We don't know what's going to happen next year. So that's confusing to anybody who wants to invest in South Africa. They must be asking themselves a lot of questions. And all the things, the violence, the destruction of infrastructure, what you saw happening in KZN yesterday, the torching of private property, we don't know what's going on. The world is like, okay, you need really, really courageous, adventurous people to put money in South Africa.
Would you say that the source of the confusion also emanates from the disappointment of what was promised in the post-apartheid South Africa in 1994? Of course, we had all these aspirations that things would be equal almost overnight. There'd be equal share in the wealth of the nation. And this is now manifesting itself in where we find ourselves in the political landscape.
Yeah, exactly. And I think also, look, it's very clear that if South Africa is to recover again and to stand up and hopefully, go back to the tracks, as it were, something fundamental has to change. This is not a matter of just replacing Solly with Cindy or Cindy with Solly. Or there are fundamental systemic changes that need to happen. And those changes are not going to happen while the African National Congress stays strong in power, because you can just pretty much make any decision about South Africa and the rest of us can complain, go to the courts if we have the money, and it still gets what it wants. So I think it's a very good thing that political parties in the opposition have realized that on their own, they cannot unseat the ANC or weaken its power. They have to work together. They have to shun their egos, leave them outside the door, get into a room, as they seem to be doing, and have a conversation. It shouldn't be about who started the conversation. The whole thing about, yes, DNA hasn't started it, he's a white man, he's trying to bully us. Oh, come on. Grow up, go into the room, have a conversation, and put your point on the table. And in the end, what will come out of there will be something that they would have all spoken about and agreed.
Yeah. Before we get into the South African Investment Conference that the President instituted a couple of years ago and how much that has yielded in terms of investment, job creation, etc., I just want to go back to the point that you made that with the African National Congress still in governance, something drastic needs to change if we are going to have a different trajectory. But at the moment, we're dealing with coalition governments anyway. So you can't really say that the ANC has got a landslide majority as it used to be in the first 2 or 3 democratic elections.
No, it definitely doesn't. But what we don't have right now are clear rules of engagement for coalition governance, because it's a fairly new thing. Look at what's been going on in the main metros in Gauteng and elsewhere in the country. We do not want to see the same thing happening at a national level. That's why it's important for these parties to get together and say, okay, this is how we're going to run coalition governance. This is not new. It's happened in many countries in the world where over time they've created rules of engagement. You don't have politicians going in there making decisions and deciding on the smallest party out of convenience to be a mayor of this and that, while the voters have nothing to say. And that's the other thing that I'm complaining about, that we have given too much power to politicians in South Africa. We, the citizens, the voters, just get invited to vote. We are loved. We're given all sorts of promises and gifts before the elections. After the elections, we have to stand aside and watch them fight over the cake. We have no say in what's going on. That has to stop.
And that has to stop, but it does need policy review or policy reform. There had been talks around Section 25 primarily of the Constitution, that if that is not addressed, then we cannot unlock the potential and the wealth to be dispersed equally or equitably amongst the people, especially the previously disadvantaged. So I think, as you're saying, the language is not necessarily clear. It depends on who you're speaking to, and you want to please that particular audience at any given time, which politicians are very good at. What does the picture look like? 2024, there's at least 600 political parties contesting the elections, not even withstanding the independent candidates. It seems very confusing. But anyway, what does the picture look like from an investor's point of view?
Look, I think investors know that many will be called, few will be chosen. And all those 600 political parties are not going to end up at the top of the list of the triangle, if you want. So I think investors are hoping for something that will enable them to make long-term decisions about South Africa. They want to have a sense that we are now headed in the direction. Right now, we're too confusing. And of course, we know that South Africa for a foreseeable future will be in the hands of coalition governing parties. That's why it's important that they start agreeing on some basic rules of engagement now. We don't want to have elections next year and then start having people running around for the next 6-7 months fighting over who gets what position, what budget, while we waiting to see whether, not just us, but the world of investors who wants to be given a sense that things are moving ahead. I mean, you spoke about the investment conferences that the president held a number of years ago. We've seen big numbers being set to have been raised. We don't see the impact on employment figures. We don't see where that is going. So it's all PR. And we know that some people in the private sector will say, yeah, we had to put the plans we already had in place anyway to this long list of what is being planned. So it's really confusing. There's a lot of PR in those investment conferences. I think the person on the ground wants to see the economy improving, more jobs being created, more unemployed graduates and others getting jobs or business opportunities, but they still go to the same political animals. We can't have those structural changes in South Africa while the same people stay in power. They've become blasé over 30 years. They don't see the interest for them, for there to be change. So what's good for South Africa is no longer good for the ANC, and what's good for the ANC is no longer good for South Africa.
Solly, thank you so much for your time. You preempted the question I was going to ask in terms of the ballpark figures of the investment conferences that we've heard being bantered around, but very little, as you're saying, in moving the needle for unemployment or job creation. But thanks indeed. Really appreciate it. So we're speaking to brand reputation specialist Solly Moeng. He's all the way in Switzerland, in La Gravière, speaking about his opinion of where the country is or the true state of South Africa.